Good afternoon. So here we sit in October with equities, traditionally an offensive asset class, at all-time highs. Most forms of fixed income, many of which are traditionally a conservative defensive asset class, also at all-time highs. Despite the fact that fundamentals globally have been weak, deteriorating, particularly in the industrial front, both in the U.S. but more pronounced outside the U.S. So why are assets at all-time highs? Well, the answer is quite simple. It's been the answer we've had for years. It's based upon the continued belief in central banks to solve all issues with printing more money, quantitative easing. Earlier this year, the Fed pivoted, cutting rates. They resumed quantitative easing, although they're going out of their way to make sure it's not called quantitative easing. But at the end of the day, printing money is quantitative easing, and so markets have the continued perception that the Fed's infallible, that things can really never go wrong as long as they're there, and other central banks globally to inject easy money into the system. When I think about this perception, I think of a show I recently watched on Netflix, a docudrama series. It was called Last Czars, and it took place in pre-revolutionary Russia towards the tail end of the Romanov dynasty. It featured the character Rasputin, who was a self-proclaimed mystic, healer, holy man, who really had no official title, but over the course of 10 years, basically became the most powerful advisor to the ruling Romanov family, all the way to advice on how to conduct World War I against Germany on the Eastern Front. They had an infallible opinion of him, despite his lack of qualifications, despite any lack of empirical evidence that his policies worked. When I think about the faith the world has in central banks, I kind of think of a similar analogy. Empirically, these policies, looking back at Japan over the past 30 years, which has been mired in stagnation, deflation, and the bank index in Japan has lost virtually 80% of its value. When you look at the Euro Stoxx bank index, down roughly half over the past decade, since the ECB has adopted such policies, you wonder why such sustained faith in these institutions. Anyway, we write about this analogy in the letter. We touch on a few other things, one of which is the importance of elections next year. We've updated our tracking of Democratic policy proposals, all of which call for significantly higher taxes on income, capital gains, wealth, corporations. So that's something to stay attuned to. And then finally, with respect to China, corporate margins are essentially at all-time highs, well above the historical means. And the China shock of the last 20 or 30 years, where essentially cheap Chinese labor has been exported to the world, it's significantly benefited global corporate margins. The question will be, if there is a trade deal, or a lack of trade deal and trade barriers, is that dynamic a thing of the past? If it is a thing of the past, you could see, and I don't think the market anticipates this, unexpected pressure longer term on some of these margins, particularly for businesses that have benefited from kind of the outsourcing to China wave. So something to think about. We hope to stay ahead of the curve, and I hope you enjoy the read. Thank you.